Ben, aka Haunted Majora's Mask. Hey guys, Awful Tower here from the Heart and Heart File crew, and yes, we know there are tons of people who read Creepypastas for their channels, whether they're haunted channels or not. But I have not gotten any new horror games in yet, so except for Mad Father, which I'm doing some playthroughs of now. So enjoy after this stuff's loading. Okay, I need your help with this. This is not Creepypasta, this is long, but I feel like my safety or well-being could very well depend on this. This is video game related, specifically Majora's Mask, and this is the creepiest shit that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Having said that, I recently moved into my dorm room, starting as a sophomore in college, and a friend of mine gave me his old Nintendo 64 to play. I was stoked, to say the least. I could finally play all of those old games of my youth that I hadn't touched in a decade. His Nintendo 64 came with one yellow controller and a rather shoddy copy of Super Smash Bros. And while beggars can be choosers, needless to say, it didn't take long until I became bored of beating up level 9 CVUs. That weekend, I decided to drive around a few neighborhoods in 20 minutes or so off campus, hitting up the local garage sales, hoping to score on some good deals for ignorant parents. I ended up picking up a copy of Pokemon Stadium, GoldenEye, fuck yeah, F-Zero, and 2 other controllers for $2. Satisfied, I began to drive out of the neighborhood when one last house caught my attention. I still had no idea why it did. There were no cars there and only one table was set up with random junk on it, but something just sort of drew me there. I usually trust my gut on these things, so I got out of the car and I was greeted by an old man. His outward appearance was, for lack of a better word, displeasing. It was odd. If you asked me to tell you why I thought he was displeasing, I couldn't really pinpoint anything. There was just something about him that put me on edge. I can't explain it. All I can tell you is that if it wasn't in the middle of the afternoon and there were other people who were shouting within shouting distance, I would not have even thought of approaching this man. Really? He flashed a crooked smile at me and asked what I was looking for, and immediately I noticed that he must be blind in one of his eyes. His right eye had that glazed over look about it. I forced myself to look to his left eye instead, trying not to defend, and asked him if he had any old video games. I was already wondering how I could politely excuse myself from the situation when he would tell me he had no idea what a video game was. But to my surprise, he said he had a few ones in an old box. He assured me that he'd be back in a jiffy and turned to head back into the garage. As I watched him hobble away, I couldn't help but notice what he was selling on the table. Littered across the table was rather peculiar paintings, various artworks that looked like ink blots that a psychiatrist might show you. Curious, I looked at them. It was obvious why no one was visiting this guy's garage sale. These weren't exactly aesthetically pleasing. As I came to the last one, for some reason, it looked almost like Majora's Mask, the same heart-shaped body with little spikes protruding outward. Initially, I just thought that since I was secretly hoping to find that game at these garage sales, some Freudian bullshit. It's protecting itself into the ink blots. But given the events that happened afterward, I'm not so sure now. I should have asked the man about it. I wish I would have asked the man about it. After staring at the Majora-shaped block, I looked up and the old man was suddenly there again. Arms linked in front of me, smiling at me. I'll admit I jumped out of reflex and I laughed nervously as he handed me a Nintendo 64 cartridge. It was a standard gray color, except that someone had written Majora on it in black permanent marker. I got butterflies in my stomach as I realized what a coincidence this was, and asked him how much he wanted for it. The old man smiled at me and told me I could have it for free, that it used to belong to a kid who was about my age that didn't live here anymore. There was something weird about how the man phrased that. I didn't really pay any attention to that. I was so caught up in not only finding this game, but getting it for free. I reminded myself to be a bit skeptical since this looked like a pretty shady cartridge, and there's no guarantee it would work, but then the optimist inside me interjected that maybe it was some kind of beta version or pirated version of the game, and that was all I needed to be back on Cloud 9. I thanked the man, and the man smiled at me and wished me well, saying goodbye to me. At least that's what it sounded like to me. All the way in the car ride home, I had a nagging doubt that the man had said something else. My fears were confirmed when I booted up the game, to my surprise it worked just fine. And there was only one save file in it, simply Ben. Goodbye, Ben, he was saying. Goodbye, Ben. I felt bad for the man. Obviously a grandparent and obviously going to see now, and I, for some reason or another, reminded him of his grandson, Ben. Out of curiosity, I looked at the save file, eyeballing it. I could tell that he was pretty far in the game, and almost all of the masks at 3-4 remaining of the losses. I noticed he had used an owl statue to save his game. He was on a daydream by a stone tower temple, but hardly an hour left before the moon crashed. I remember thinking that it was a shame that he had come so close to beating the game, but he never finished it. I made a new file named Link out of tradition and started the game, ready to relive my childhood. It was such a shady looking game cartridge, I was impressed at how smoothly it ran. Literally just like a retail copy of the game, save for a few minor hiccups here and there, like textures being when they shouldn't be, random flashes of cutscenes at odd intervals, but nothing too bad. However, the only thing that was a little unnerving was that at times the NPCs would call me Link, and at other times they would call me Ben. I figured it was just a fluke in the program causing our files to get mixed up or something. It did kind of creep me out that after a while, it was around after I had beaten the Woodfall Temple that I regrettably went into the safe house and bladed Ben. I intended to preserve the file just out of respect of the game's original owner. It's not like I needed 2 files anyway, hoping that would solve the problem. It didn't, and it didn't. It did, and it didn't. Now NPCs wouldn't call me anything. When a name should be in the dialogue, there was just a blank space. My save file name was still called Link. Though, frustrated, I went homework to do, I put the game down for a day. I started playing the game again last night, using the Lens of Truth and working my way towards completing the Snowhead Temple. Now, some of you more hardcore Majora Smash players know about the 4th day glitch. For those who don't, you can Google it, but the gist of it is that right as the clock's about to hit 0000 on the final day, you talk to your astronomer and look at the telescope. If you time it right, the countdown disappears, and you essentially have another day to finish whatever you were doing. Deciding to do the glitch to try and finish the Snowhead Temple, I happened to get it right on the first try, and the time counter at the bottom disappeared. However, when I pressed BDX telescope instead of being greeted by the astronomer, I found myself in the Majora boss fight room. At the end of the game, the trippy box narrator, staring at a skull kid hovering above me. There was no sound, just him floating in the air above me. And the background music, which was regular to the area, was so creepy. Immediately, my palms began to sweat. This was definitely not normal. Skull Kid never appeared here. I tried looking around the area, and no matter where I went, Skull Kid would always be facing me, looking at me, not saying anything. Nothing would happen though, and this kept up for another 60 seconds. I thought the game had bugged or something, but I was beginning to doubt that very much. I was about to reach for the reset button when text appeared on my screen. You're not sure why, but you apparently had a reservation. I instantly recognized that text. You get that message when you get the room key from Anju at the stock plot inn, but why was it playing here? I refused to entertain the notion that it was almost as if the game was trying to communicate with me. I started to navigate the room again, testing to see if that was some sort of trigger that enabled me to interact with something here. Then I realized how stupid I was to even think that someone could reprogram a game like this was absurd. Sure enough, 15 seconds later, another message appeared on the screen. Again, like the first one, was already a pre-existing phrase. Go to the lair of the temple boss? Yes, no. I paused a second. In a deep breath, I pressed yes, and the screen faded away. With the words "Dawn the New Day," the subtext beneath it. Where I was ported to fill me with the most intense sense of dread and impending fear I had ever experienced. The only way I can describe the way I felt here is having this feeling of inexplicable depression on a profound scale. I am normally not a depressed person, but the way I felt here was a feeling I didn't even know existed. It was just a twisted, powerful presence that seemed to wash over me. I appeared in some kind of weird Twilight Zone version of Clock Town. I walked out of the clock tower as you normally do when you start from day 1, only to find that all the inhabitants were gone. Usually with the 4th day glitch, you still find the guards and a dog that runs around outside the tower. This time they were all gone. What replaced them was an ominous feeling that there was something out there, in the same area as me, and that I was watching. I had 4 hearts to my name, and the hero's bell. By this point, I wasn't even considered a war my avatar. I thought that a person was in some kind of danger. Perhaps the most chilling thing was the music. It was a song of healing, ripped straight from the game itself, but played in reverse. The music would get louder, building up so as if you should expect it to pop out at you, but nothing ever did, and it constantly began to wear on my mental state. Every now and then I would hear the faint laugh of the happy mask salesman in the back door, just quiet enough so that I wasn't sure if I was just hearing things or just loud enough for me to determine to find them. I looked at all 4 zones of Clock Town only to find nothing, no one. Textures were missing. West Clock Town had me walking on air. The entire area felt broken, hopelessly broken. As the reverse song of healing repeated for what must have been the 50th time, I just remember standing in the middle of South Clock Town, realizing that I had never felt so alone in a video game before. As I walked to the ghost town, I didn't know whether it was a combination of out-of-place textures and atmosphere and a haunting melody or the once peaceful and soothing song being butchered and distorted, but I was literally on the verge of tears, and I had no idea why. I hardly ever cry. Something had gripped me here before, and this powerful sense of depression that's both foreign and crippling. I tried leaving Clocktown, but every time I attempted to zone out, the screen would fade to black, and I would just zone into another part of Clocktown. I tried playing my ocarina. I wanted to escape, and I did not want to be here, but every time I played Song of Time or Song of Soaring, it would only say, your notes echo far, but nothing happened. By this point, it was obvious the game didn't need me to leave. I had no idea why it was keeping me here. I didn't want to go into other buildings, and I felt that I would be too vulnerable there to whatever I was terrified of. I don't know why, but I came up with the idea that maybe if I drowned myself at the laundry pool, I could spawn somewhere else and leave this place. As I zoned in and ran towards the pool, that's when it happened. Link grabbed his head, and the screen flashed right from it. How did that sound? And smiling at me. Not Link. Neo Skull Kid's scream playing in the background. When the screen returned, I was staring at the Link statue from playing the song Elegy of Emptiness. I screamed as the thing just stared back at me with a haunting facial expression. I turned around and ran out and back into South Clocktown. To my horror, the fucking statue followed me in the only way I can compare this. It's like the weeping angels from Doctor Who. Every so often, at random intervals, the animation would play of the statue appearing behind me. It was like the thing was chasing me, or I don't even want to fucking say it, haunting me. Well, guys, that was part 1 of Ben, aka Haunted Majora's Mask Creepypasta. Like I said, we haven't got any much to do horror games in. I'm looking for new ones out there. If y'all got any, drop me a line or whatever. Send me a message on YouTube if y'all have any horror games for me to download. I'll be happy to do it. Otherwise, Heart and Horror Files out, and we'll make a new part soon.